Hi, I'm having a great day. You're watching JFG Entertainment, and for this video, I'm ranking the episodes of Last of Us from my least favorite to my favorite. And so yeah, all episodes were really good, so it was kind of hard to rank them. And even though an episode's last place doesn't mean that it was a bad episode, because I think all episodes were great. But I gotta rank them. Some of them I'm sure are gonna be controversial, some of them everybody's gonna agree with. But overall, I think I came up with a really good ranking that I feel really proud of. So yeah, I just want to get into it. But beware, this is gonna have spoilers for the whole season. So if you're not seen Last of Us, then get out of here. What are you doing? Go watch it and then come back, because trust me, the show's really good. And as always, feel free to leave your own opinion down in the comments, because remember, this is my opinion. So yeah, let's get started. So at 9th place, we have episode 4, and episode 4 is titled "Please Hold to My Hand." And this is the episode where we see like Joe and Ellie crash. You know, we see like the iconic scene from the game. He's driving, and it's like this one is like, "Stop, help!" And then like Ellie's like, "Are we not gonna help him?" And he's like, "No," and he just like accelerates and whatnot. I think it's a really cool scene from the game and from the show. They're both really cool. And of course, they crash and they had to like make it out alive from that like place. And Joe's about to die, and Ellie has to shoot the guy with a gun for the first time and whatnot. And I thought it was a really good episode. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the start of it, like the banter that they started with, where Ellie's like talking about the puns and everything. Really funny. And you kind of get to see Joe and Ellie really do kind of get this kind of bonding moments throughout the episode. Like whenever you see Joe's talking to Ellie, and he's like, "You're a kid, you shouldn't have to go through this." All that stuff. You really get to see where Joe's coming from. You get to see where Ellie's coming from, revealing that she had already killed somebody before. And ultimately, you really do feel these bonding times, especially towards the end of the episode. Before they go to sleep, they're talking about stuff and whatnot, and like puns and everything. And they're making all these jokes. And at the end of the episode, you see like Joe laugh and whatnot. Like you really do feel like this bonding time. So I really enjoyed all that part of the episode. And it ends with Henry and Sam. But the thing is that it just kind of felt a little bit too much like filler. It was basically all set up for episode 5 and to just kind of bond these two characters. So in general, I thought the episode was good, just not a great compared to the other ones. So yeah, that's why it's my last place. Alright, moving on to my number 8 spot, and that is going to be episode 8. So that's funny. Number 8, episode 8, that's pretty funny. Now, this episode is titled "When We Are in Need," and it's the David episode. And this is the episode that I'm sure is going to be the most controversial in my ranking, because from what I've been able to see from the internet reactions and whatnot, everybody really likes this episode. But for me personally, it just wasn't to the scale of the other episodes. Why do I say this? Well, various reasons. So let's go over it. But before that, I just want to give you my perspective. I played the game. I have played the game. And I played it when the first episodes were coming out. So it's super fresh in my brain. And when I played the game, my favorite part of the game was David's part. I thought it was the darkest part of the story. The most like scary part of the story to play through and whatnot. And I thought it really just completely captured everything that about Last of Us, like how not scared it is of going super far. I really loved it. So when this was the episode I was of course the most excited to see. I was like, I can't wait for episode 8. It's gonna be my favorite one, and it ended up being my second least favorite. And the reason for this is because I just felt like this episode downgraded a lot of stuff from the game. I felt like the stuff that the game had was by far superior to the things that they had in the episode. For example, in the game, David and Ellie had to fight together for survival against clickers, which I thought was a lot more interesting of a story than them just like talking. And I think it kind of built them to have like this stress, because they're like both helping each other, they're both to save each other's lives, and it makes it all the more like surprising whenever David ends up trying to, you know, do stuff to her and whatnot. It makes it a lot darker. It makes it a lot more surprising whenever it gets revealed that his men were the one that Joe ended up killing. So it's a lot. The complete plot twist. Whereas in this one, well, I already knew what was going on, of course, because I played the game. I still felt like it didn't capture the same thing, because they didn't save each other, because they didn't have that survival thing where they had to save each other and they depended on each other. So it just kind of took that off. I did think also that the actor that was played David wasn't as good as the one in the game. Like I know the game you get to animate and everything, but I felt like he was missing a little of the creepiness. I'm not saying that he wasn't creepy, because he definitely was, but I felt like he wasn't just to the scale of the game personally. And I just felt like in general, just the scenes in the game, well, they were almost the exact same replica. I felt like they were done better in the game, mostly because you get to play through them, so it made it a little bit better of an experience. And here, I just felt like some things didn't fully work. For example, I thought that they could have dove into why David is the leader, because from the show, I really didn't feel like this guy was a leader of anything. Like you just didn't feel his power for some reason, which I didn't like. Whereas in the game, you really did feel like this guy could lead. You really did feel like this guy was like a hunter and whatnot. Like I like that perspective. So here it kind of downgraded from that, and also the fact that he's like a religious person and he like reads the Bible and whatnot. A preacher, a preacher. I don't know why they kind of dove into it at the start of the episode, but I feel like he kind of lost it towards the end of the episode. They added some interesting perspectives, like adding the fact that he was a teacher before the whole thing of the infected and whatnot. So I feel like that is some cool stuff. And of course, the scene where Ellie is like just destroying him and plummeting him, and the ending scene where Joe like holds her and he's like, "It's okay, baby girl," comes right off the game. And I think it works really well in the show. But I just think that because the episode was such a downgrade from the game, in my personal opinion, it just has to go so slow. Alright, on to my 7th spot, and that is going to be episode 6, titled Kin. Or at least that's how I think you say it. And this episode is the one with Tommy, the one where Joe finally reunites with Tommy. And oh my god, I was so happy that they finally reunited with Tommy. And I love this episode. I love the opening of the episode, you know, the one where like they're like talking to the two people that live outside of everything, of society. And they're like, "Oh yeah, you don't want to cross that river, it's like the dead river and whatnot." I really love that opening. I think it's a really good opening. It's kind of comedic in a show that's this dark, but at the same time it keeps like its dark tones. And then at the end of it, you get to see Joe's having an anxiety attack, of course, thinking that Tommy might be dead. So I really like that perspective. And then they finally get to like the other river, and like the horses are there. They stop them. They put the horse on them. And once again, you get to see Joe having that anxiety attack and just kind of freeze whenever he thought the dog was gonna like smell something in Ellie and kill her and whatnot. So I really love that. And then they finally get to the fortress, or like I forgot what the place was called, where Tommy is, and of course they get to reunite and everything. And then right after, like, there's, like, drama and whatnot. And that's kind of interesting. I understand where the drama came from, but it wasn't my favorite part of the drama. It happened in the game, too. I didn't think the drama worked super well, but I understand it. You know what I mean? I get it. I love the fact that they made Tommy and Maria now have a baby. I think it works very well. I really liked it. And I think that the scene wherever Joe's turned to explain to Tommy why Tommy has to take Ellie instead of him, I think it just works super well. I think it was so much of an upgrade over the game. It's kind of crazy how much better it was. I really love it. Wow, it was a great scene. Trust me, it was a great scene. These are just like talking to him about how, you know, now he's old, he's going deaf, he's not the same one as 5 years ago. I love that scene. It was such a good scene. And I think that Tommy, played by Gabriel Luna, did a wonderful job playing Tommy. I think he was great. I love the accent and everything. And then, of course, we had that famous scene, "You have no idea what loss is." What an amazing scene. I really thought it was very nicely portrayed by Ellie, by Bella Ramsey, and, of course, by Joe or Pedro Pascal. It was done awesomely. It worked super well. I love the exploration of the whole city, the whole town. I thought in general it worked great. And that exciting attack that Joe had in the middle of the episode, whenever he thought he saw Sarah as an adult, and then it turned out it wasn't her, of course. I mean, all that just completely worked for me. I thought it was great. And then towards the end of the episode, you know, whenever they're like finally leaving together, and Joe kind of finally accepts Ellie as like a friend, and finally lets her in, I think it works very well. The thing that really kind of put this episode down for me is like the actual end where Joe gets stabbed. I thought that scene was such a downgrade of the game. The fact that he got stabbed after just one guy, and it was kind of like just kind of there. It wasn't like in the game. It's so much more epic. Here it was kind of like he just got stabbed and whatnot. I thought that downgraded it a lot, and also the fact that there was like this kind of drama going on between Joe and Tommy, which happens in the game, but it's just not my favorite. So that's why it's at number 7. But it's still a really good episode. Alright, we're on to my number 6 spot, and that's going to be episode 7, titled Left Behind. And this is the episode with Railey and Ellie. And I like this episode a lot. I think it was a really nice episode. Of course, it comes from the DLC of The Last of Us, which puts me into an interesting perspective because I actually hadn't played the DLC before watching this episode, so I wasn't exactly sure what was going to happen. So that was the first time in the show that I wasn't exactly sure what was going to happen. So it was kind of cool to watch it in that perspective. And I thought it worked really well. I love Bella Ramsey playing Ellie in this episode. I love the actor that played Railey. I'm forgetting her name, but she did an amazing job playing Railey. And you get to see this like kind of the early days of Ellie, and I think it worked really well as kind of giving her like an origin story, if you can say, of like, okay, she had like this love whenever she was a little bit younger. They went to the mall and whatnot, and that's when she got her bite, and that's when she found out she was immune and whatnot. And the whole mall scene was just beautiful. I mean, it was amazing. It was an amazing date. It was an amazing date night. For reals, you get to see her like watching the escalators for the first time, and she was super excited. That was super awesome. You get to see them play Mortal Kombat. Amazing stuff. You get to see them like in the Halloween place, just dancing and whatnot. Like, I mean, that sounds so cool. It sounds like such an amazing date night. I mean, it was awesome. The horses and the lights, I've heard it's called cartwheel, is that what it's called? Something like that. I mean, that whole thing was super awesome. It was beautifully directed too. It just looked great. The whole episode looked great. And then when the clicker finally did show up, or the stalker, I think it was a stalker, it was awesome. Like, you really felt it. They were like in the costume Halloween place, and then it shows up and everything, and they had to like kill it. I mean, it worked so well. And then at the end, you really do feel like, yeah, Ellie's just mad. Like, why can't she have anything else in her life? She's beating everything up and whatnot. I think it just worked really, really well. And of course, the end of the episode, you know that she had to kill Railey. and that just makes it all the more tragic and all the more dark. Even though they didn't show it, you know that she had to kill it. So I think that it all worked really well. I thought it fit very nicely into the story as well, like the place where they had to put it in the story. I think it worked very well. While Joe's kind of hurt and he's kind of injured, I think it worked well. Overall, I thought it fit me in the feels, and I really like these episodes of The Last of Us where they kind of tell their own individual story. Well, this one's my least favorite one out of the three. I think it's still a really good one and a really strong one. So yeah, really nice episode. Alright, we're on to my fifth spot, and that is going to be episode 2, titled Infected. And Infected is like the closest to the game that we get in the show. It's almost a shot by shot in some scenes, and I think it's really awesome. And I love to see this episode. I think it's a really kind of unique episode because we have Tess and Joel working together, which we don't see that a lot. We just see it in the first 2 episodes, and I love seeing that dynamic. I think it works really well. The actor they casted for Tess was amazing. I thought she did an amazing job. And this is, of course, the episode where she ends up dying as well. So I thought her death scene was handled very well. And I thought her death scene was an upgrade over the game. And in every aspect of the word, I love the dialogue more. I love the way that she died by having to take out like the whole horde of infected and by burning the whole place, blowing the whole place up. And instead of just getting shot by Pedro, I thought it worked very well. I thought just in general, Tess worked very much better in this show because it really did feel like Joe and Tess's dynamic, and you feel like they were almost something, but Joe didn't quite want to commit to her and whatnot, and you felt that whenever she was like, I never even asked you to feel the same way that I felt about you, so just do this for me. I mean, I just loved it. I think Tess was such an amazing character, and I think the show really displayed that with this episode. And beyond that, we see that this is the episode where we kind of get to see the most infected that we see in the show, along with episode 5. This is the one where like you really get to go hand to hand with this, and like in the museum area where like they're really close together and they have to be quiet and whatnot, and that whole scene was amazing. I mean, it just got jump scares. You're worried for these characters. It really captures the feel of the game whenever you're playing it, and like you got caught and like you had to run and shoot everybody out. I mean, it really captured that perfectly, and I thought Druckmann directed this episode, the same director as the game, and it shows. I mean, you just felt the game presence over this episode, which made me like it even more. I thought it just worked super awesome. The clickers were amazing. They were complete menaces. Joel was super cool in this episode. I mean, everything in this episode just worked and just really captured the magic of the game for me. And the clickers, the fact that they were here and they made such a strong presence and they were so scary, I think just really made this episode be one of the best. Alright, on to my 4th spot, and that's going to be episode 9, titled Look for the Light. And that is going to be, of course, the finale that just came out this past weekend. And I thought this episode was an amazing finale. I thought it ended the series off very strong. However, there's just better episodes, which is why this is my number 4. But overall, I love this episode. I love the Joel versus the Fireflies type of thing. I thought it was amazing. The hospital scene was really awesome. I kind of wish it was a little bit longer. I felt like it was a little too actiony. It was more like a montage of him just killing with the music, which I really like. I like that perspective that they're trying to make Joel look evil, because he is. He's making a selfish decision, and I get it. I understand people that are Team Joe, and I understand people that are not Team Joe. I understand both sides. I don't really know what side I'm in, but I like the directors and the writers committed to a certain side, and they showed that perspective. They showed Joe kind of doing these atrocities and committing these atrocities by the editing, the music, all that type of stuff. I think it worked really well. I just wish it was a little bit longer and you felt a little bit more concerned with everybody else. I think it needed a little bit more length to really make it feel like, yeah, this is the hospital scene from the game, the one that's just like iconic because Joe just murders everybody that he gets on his way, because you really feel the determination of Joel. I felt like we needed a little bit more of that. I think we just needed something about it. I just think it didn't hit us well because I think it was just a little bit too short. But it was still an amazing scene. I also love the scene whenever, the giraffe scene. I think it's such a beautiful scene between Ellie and Joel. And you really get to see more into Ellie's kind of thought or process whenever she's talking about like, this can't all be for nothing and whatnot. I think it's an amazing scene, and of course you get to see her finally exploring the beauty of like giraffes and whatnot. I mean, it's just a really cool thing to have. And then beyond that, something that they added new to the show was the fact that Joel tried to kill himself, and he talks about that in this episode. He talks about how the guy who missed in the scar right there is himself, and I love that thing that they added for that. I think it makes a lot of sense in the context of how we've seen Joel after Sarah, and I think it just makes his character almost tragic, and it makes also why Ellie's so important to him. Like, without her, he would probably kill himself. So that makes you understand more of why he's not gonna let the Fireflies kill her. So I think that's really cool. Beyond that, I think everything past like the hospital scene, I mean, it's just straight off the game. The way he kills Marlene, the way it's caught and edited, like like he's in the car and then you get the flashbacks to him killing Marlene, and like you just come after her and he shoots her and whatnot. And then like of course the ending whenever he's like swear to me, and then she says okay. I mean, and that's where it ends. Straight off the game, and I thought it worked super well in the game. I think it worked super well here. Except here, I think I actually felt the emotion even more because I felt more attached to these characters as I was watching it. Whereas when I was playing it, I was kind of scared. Let me not die here. Here, I felt super attached to the characters and to the whole episode. So I thought the emotion level even kind of got better from the game. So yeah, an amazing finale. Oh, and I really love Pedro Pascal's face acting in this episode. Works so well. You really felt like the guilt and the shock of what he just did, but at the same time you feel like, yeah, he has no regrets. He would have done it again. He's fully on committed to Ellie. I think that just worked super well for me. So overall, I thought this episode was a great finale and a great way to end this season 1. So yeah, awesome episode. Alright, on to my third spot, and that is going to be episode 3, titled Long Time. And this episode was the biggest surprise and the biggest detour from the game, Bill and Frank. We never got to see Bill and Frank's story in the game. We just kind of saw Bill being super mad the whole time, and I do kind of wish we kind of got to see a little banter between Bill and Ellie. But I think the fact that they replaced it with such a beautiful episode, with such a masterpiece in my personal opinion, worked so well. It was a self-contained story for the most part, where you kind of got to see kind of Bill and Frank's story since they met to the very last moments, literally to the last moments through the decades of like this infected pandemic going on, and I thought they worked super well. Of course, Bill built like this super self-sustaining base that he can just kind of live there for the rest of his life if he wanted to in this infected world, and he did. He lived there for the rest of his life, and then he brought Frank in with him, and I love to get to see like the story that doesn't trust him, and then you kind of get to see like the build-up of their love, and over the decades, you really do get to feel that kind of like, you know, that relationship isn't perfect. Like whenever he's like, we're gonna have friends, and Bill's like, no, and then Frank's like, I've been talking to a girl over the radio, and Bill's super mad. Like you get to see like, yeah, they're not a perfect match because nobody in this world is. Nobody's a perfect match, but they just managed to live together like that, and they managed to love each other for who they are. And I love that. I think it makes the show feel very realistic. It makes this love feel very realistic, and it makes it feel a lot more beautiful. Even at the end, whenever Frank's like, I had my bad days with you, but I had a lot more good days with you. So I thought that whole thing really worked very well. And of course, what really brings this episode together is the way that the episode ends. The way that the episode, the way that Frank and Bill's story really ends in like this tragedy. Because this whole time you think, oh, Bill's going to be the one that dies. And then no, he's not the one that dies. It's going to be Frank, the one that's kind of has the disease. And so he's slowly deteriorating. He's slowly dying. And I thought it was so tragic. You know, he's like, today's going to be my last day. And then of course you have the last dinner scene. Straight up a parallel from the first dinner scene. And then they both ended together. They get married. They end life together. They had a beautiful life. They enjoyed their lives together. I mean, it's just a beautiful love story. And what is this very tragic, dark world, which is amazing. And of course, this was an episode where we're kind of dealing with the aftermath of Tess dying. So whenever Joe and Ellie get to Bill and Frank and they read the letter, and Bill's like, you would understand, Joe. Use anything that I have to keep Tess safe. And then, you know, Joe reads that, and of course he's like he has to walk outside. He's about to break out and break down. I mean, it's just, yeah, you feel it. You feel Joe's pain, and it's super good. It's super good. I really love that change that they added from the game. And then, you know, he takes a shower or not. Ellie's like, you need a shower, and it's really funny. And you have to see them like on the car, of course, as they're going out, and the final shot is just the car going out from the window perspective, kind of showing like we're leaving Bill and Frank behind. They had a beautiful life. I mean, it's just, I thought this episode just really worked in all perspectives, all cylinders, and I think it's going to be the episode that wins the most awards. You know, it's the episode that really got everybody talking about the show, and I can fully see why. Amazing acting, amazing cinematography, amazing writing, amazing script, just really hits you in the feels. I think it's just an amazing episode. Alright, moving on to my second spot, and that's going to be episode 1, titled When You're Lost in the Darkness. And this is, of course, the one where you start off with Sarah and Joe and his brother Tommy, and you get to see the outbreak as it happens during the day and during the night. And I think the whole outbreak scene, the whole first 30 minutes of that 90-minute episode was perfect. It was very different from the game. The game had an amazing opening. In fact, I thought the game had a perfect opening until I saw this episode, and I was like, wow. The show actually topped the opening from the game. It made it even better, managed to improve it, and it was amazing. You get to see a lot more of Sarah, you get to see a lot more of Joe and Sarah together, like a lot of like their banter and whatnot. You get to see a little bit more of Joe and Tommy before it. The whole outbreak just goes crazy. You get these horror scenes, you know, whenever Sarah has to walk into the house because she kind of wants to leave the dog back, and it's like the grandma chasing her, and like Joe has to like kind of like turn her head around. I mean, the whole thing just worked the way whenever they're like in the traffic, whenever the plane falls down. I mean, it was just perfect. It was straight up perfect. And of course, Sarah's death scene really just hit you in the feels. You really just felt it. I thought it was an amazing death scene for Sarah. I even liked it more than the game, and that's saying something. I love whenever Joe's like, "Tommy, help!" and Tommy just knows, yeah, that's it for Sarah. I mean, I think the whole opening sequence, the whole first 30 minutes of the outbreak just happening to Sarah's death, it was perfect. It was straight up everything I could have asked for. And I still remember seeing it. The show debuted, and I was so excited to watch the show because I had been playing the game, obviously. And I started watching it, and whenever that happened, I was like, this show is incredible. I already know this show was going to be incredible. It was just an amazing episode. An amazing opening to the episode. I mean, awesome. Then after that, you get, of course, the time skip and whatnot. And I love it. I think that whole second half of the episode really world builds everything of The Last of Us. You straight up feel it from the game. You get to know Pedro, you get to know the Fireflies. Oh, and whenever Joe has to like burn the kid's body that we just saw a little bit earlier in the episode, I mean, that was just so sad, so devastating. But I love it. You get to see Tess, you get to see them finally pick up Ellie at the end of the episode, which I think worked really well. I mean, everything in the episode, I think it just world everything in the second half of the episode, and the first half of the episode was just perfect for me. Just straight up the most perfect opening you could have for a show, in my personal opinion. I think it was just an amazing episode. But there is one episode that I thought was better, and of course, that is going to be my number one spot, which is episode 5, titled Endure and Survive. And this is Sam and Henry's episode, and I think this episode was just, honestly, quite literally almost call it perfect. I thought everything would have worked. They did a lot of changes from the game, and I did not mind any of them. In fact, I thought that they just improved it a lot more. For example, the decision to make Sam deaf, I thought was an amazing change. The fact that we got to spend a lot more time with Sam and Henry before they met Joe, you know, what's like having to live on the rooftop and having to them eat, and then like him painting superheroes, and like whenever Henry paints like a stripe of red over Sam. I mean, all of that bonding time that we got to see at the start of the episode, you just made you feel for these characters. So, like, if anything happened to these characters, I'm going to cry, you know, so you don't want anything bad to happen to these characters. And of course, it does happen, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. And you got to see a lot more backstory. They give Henry this backstory where he kind of turns somebody in to Pedro for some medication so that his brother could kind of live, which I thought was a very interesting and like multi-layered decision that they kind of gave him this background. And I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. You don't get to see Henry as a full-on hero, but of course he's not a villain either. Everybody has their own reasons, their own motives. I thought that worked really, really well. Then once I finally get to Joe and Ellie, I love the banter that they have together, and I love that Joe, he kind of cares for these guys because, you know, they have a kid too, and he kind of wants them to make it through and everything. So I really love that fact. You see the scene whenever they're like making the plan and whatnot. That thing's really interesting. I love whenever they were planning. And then whenever they get to the playground on the sewers, wow, that was just a beautiful scene. You get to see Ellie be a kid. You get to see Sam be a kid. You get to kind of find more backstory over Henry. You get to find a little bit more backstory over Joel, of course. And I thought that whole scene just really worked to bond all these characters together. And after that, they go to like the houses, and you get to see the famous sniper from the game trying to snipe them down. And of course, Joel kills him, but he was trying to be nice. He was like, please don't let me do it. And of course he did, and then he kills him. And then we get to the masterpiece of the show, in my personal opinion, which is whenever Kathleen arrives, and then, like, you know, they're trying like, come on, Sam, Henry, come out. I'm gonna, like, you're dead anyways. And then, of course, the bloater comes out. The bloater and all the infected, and it was just an amazing scene. Like, the truck is falling down from the burning house, and then boom, just a bunch of infected, like just a bunch, like super unexpected, just kind of come out, and the bloater comes out, and it was perfect. It was an amazing scene, a bunch of infected, a bunch of horror scenes, like the kid, toddler type of clicker or stalker or whatever. That thing was scary. I think it was really scary. Whenever Ellie walks into the car and she has to get out because the kid is there and Joel can't snipe it. I mean, that was beautiful. Ellie with the knife trying to save Sam and Henry. I mean, everything about it was so cool. Whenever the bloater just destroys Tommy's actor's character, I mean, it was beautiful. It was amazing. Everything about that whole show just works so well. The whole scene just works so well. Just Joe really trying to desperately snipe everybody out of Ellie's way. It was just amazing. Just seeing amazing, like, just moment that we got to see. And then, like, of course, Kathleen just ready to kill them. And then, like, the kid clicker kind of kills her. I mean, talk about poetry. You know, she was talking about killing a kid, and the kid ends up killing her. That was beautiful. I thought it just worked really well. And the infected, really just, you just felt the presence of the infected. I mean, I felt so bad for I think Kansas City. They're very much screwed after that encounter. But wow, an amazing scene, an amazing moment, and honestly, what I think is like the height of The Last of Us. But even after that, we get to see even a more amazing scene, and that is, of course, Sam and Harry's dead scene. Of course, whenever we know that Sam got bit, and Ellie tries to save him, but she couldn't. So in the morning, he turns and he's trying to, like, of course, bite Ellie and whatnot. And then Joe's like trying to save him, and then, like, Sam's like, no, that's my brother. And then, Henry, and then Henry ends up shooting Sam. And he's like, what did I just do? I just do it. And then he kills himself. I mean, wow. Talk about a moment. Talk about a moment. And especially when the episode is titled Endure and Survive. And of course, Sam didn't survive. So Henry couldn't endure living without him. I mean, I thought it was just an amazing, talk about amazing writing. That's just, mwah, chef's kiss. Straight up amazing. And then you get to see Bella Ramsey's acting, face acting, like her shock in her face right after that happened. It was beautiful. And the way the episode ends, whenever, like, they bury the bodies, and then, like, Ellie kind of puts, like, the board on the one that Sam always wrote on. I mean, just, it was such an amazing episode. It was everything about it just worked for me. It was by far my favorite episode. What I could call almost perfect of an episode. The way it just ended, the way the infected happened, the way that Sam and Harry's story was handled, the way Joe and Ellie's relationship goes on from here. I mean, I just couldn't have asked for anything better with this episode and with this story being told. So yeah, that's my episodes ranking for The Last of Us Season 1. As you can see, I have a lot of thoughts on each episode, but I really wanted to go in depth into each episode. But I'm curious to hear your own ranking down in the comments. Which ones do you agree with? Which ones do you disagree with from my ranking? And what's your own personal ranking? I'm very curious. If you don't want to tell me your whole list, at least tell me your favorite or your top 3. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts. Tell me that down in the comments. As well as please leave a like if you enjoyed this video. It will be very helpful. So please leave a like and subscribe for a lot more content. A lot more content on Last of Us and more movies and shows and whatnot. So subscribe. And yeah, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. Hope you have a great rest of your day. And this is Jeremy Timon. Out.